And now on the show, we're going to take a look at a brand new Australian feature film called Anno 2020. Of course, we've heard from the director, James Morgan. And luckily, the other night, Harley and I were lucky enough to be at the premiere of the film. So, Harley, you can kick things off. Tell us a little bit about Anno 2020.
Yeah, very interesting film set during the COVID lockdowns and actually filmed during that time. So it really is a creature of its time, but it does it quite well. So basically, you've got all these different stories in different parts of the world, people who are segregated from each other, and they're all going about different things in their lives, going through different situations, and really very little of it is about COVID. It's just their lives are impacted by COVID. So you have a mother and daughter who are separated by oceans because the mother is at home in the USA. The daughter, Emma, she's in Wuhan province in China where the breakout started. So, of course, there's this major concern and there's this real kind of tension in their relationship as the mother is calling her like every 12 hours to make sure she's okay. But of course, she's barely leaving her room because that's the state they're in there. But of course, then it's impacted by other issues that come up, and it's not COVID that's the issue. Um, and of course, it does play a big part in things there, but you see through other characters all these things that are impacting their lives. We've got one guy in Australia who's I think the segregation is kind of getting to him, and he's realizing that, hey, I've been a bit of a playboy in my life, but I kind of need someone now. And he's kind of speaking to these women from his past and realizing he wants to be with someone and settle down with someone, but he's still kind of being a bit questionable in those choices and how he's approaching things. Then you've got a group of people in the United States, and they're working on a big kind of a news item about, children being kidnapped and sold into slavery, that sort of thing. And there's kind of a conspiracy going on against them, but it's more about the things that come out in the relationships around those people and the people who interact with them. So yeah, it's really interesting. There's so many things. It's like a moment in time that you don't necessarily get a conclusion for everything, just as you wouldn't have. It's just a snapshot of 1 year where all the world has sort of gone quiet. It's quite interesting. So yeah,
Yeah, I think like one of the things I really enjoyed about this movie was how they put this together. Like, I think one of the things that I'll take away from that period of time, from basically from 2020 for those next couple of years, was how creative artists were. Like when I look back at that time, not every memory of mine is a bad memory. I remember things like being able to see some of my favorite heavy metal bands do concerts like online and projected right into my lounge room. I was always intrigued by how artists coped with that time. And I think to see a group of filmmakers like James and his team put together a feature film like this during a time when we were in lockdowns and things like that, it's pretty amazing because for some of the actors doing their roles in this film, they were either stuck inside their homes with lockdowns themselves or could only go less than 5 kilometers from their homes and things like that. So for them to be able to put this together and bring it together, but to bring it together in a way where it actually does make a story that intertwines, I found that really fascinating. I've always loved movies where, like, a film you and I talk about quite often, Go, with Katie Holmes,
yeah,
and
yep.
people like that, where I've always loved films where different people's stories all intertwine. So for me, I love the fact that this movie did that and it works so well.
Yeah, there were little moments in there. You have these very separate stories, and they're all quite engaging. And I think as well, the way it's filmed, like, yes, you have a lot of these Zoom conversation type scenes, but there is something in a few of them. Every so often, I would be like, "Oh, you know what? There's something in this that I'm really drawn to." Like, I'm sure we've all spent many days and hours stuck in front of computers during lockdowns where it's like, I'm sick of looking at this screen. And so you're doing it on a big screen now, and you're probably having some, horrible flashbacks to how it was at the time. But there is something, every so often, there's something that you'll be like, oh, wow, you know what? I'm actually really kind of engaged in this. Probably one of the more successful ones I've seen do this.
Yeah.
I know there was things released all the time, so it's good seeing like creative people find a way to utilize the restrictions. And of course, it's not all, people sitting in front of computer screens. There's a lot of other stuff in there as well. They've actually made efforts to film external scenes and bits in between, and it really captures something. So a bit of guerrilla filmmaking here and there. I, yeah, I can't say enough positive stuff about the way it was filmed. It looks great.
Yeah, and I think also some of the performances are really good as well. Like I was kind of excited to see some of the actors in there, like actors like Brett Partridge, who I grew up watching in Water Rats. You haven't seen him do stuff for a long time, but I thought for me the standout was Kevin Scott Allen, someone who, if you're a Star Trek fan, you will recognize from Deep Space Nine. I thought he had a really, really good role in this film, and his acting was amazing. I thought playing a character who felt that his family had never accepted the fact that he was gay, and now he wants to be part of his niece's life, but he feels like the family is stopping him from doing that. I really thought that was one of the standout acting performances for me. Every time he appeared on the screen, I was like, "Oh, great! I can't wait to see what he's going to be doing next." Well, what did you think of the acting in it?
The acting was brilliant. I was kind of wondering how it was going to be because there wasn't a lot given away in the trailer, and they even said in the live session, it's like we deliberately made the trailer a bit obscure so you didn't know what you were gonna get.
Yeah,
It's sort of like raising questions in you. And yeah, I have to say that I thought it was probably going to be more of a conspiracy movie about COVID or something.
yeah.
And while like one character does sort of talk about that, it is not the focus at all. It's just really good character drama and progression in this moment in time. Yeah, I have to say I love those scenes with Elijah as well. It was the interaction with his brother. There was something in that I think we all kind of have that thing with family where it's like, "Oh, okay, they're on that rant again," or
Yeah.
yeah, it's mum and dad were like this and yada yada yada. So I think that was captured so well. Uh I can't say enough. There was oh Crystal Huang as the mother of one of the girls in China, and the daughter is in Beijing, and we have another character Emma who's in Wuhan. So those two are friends, but they not close enough to each other to be able to see each other. So they're over Zoom speaking to each other, the girls, plus both of their parents are in the United States, I think it was. And yeah, the different relationships with the mothers versus between the daughters and things like that. It was really interesting to see that pull between people and where their priorities are for people as well. I don't think there's any really bad performances in there. There was some humorous stuff, a lot of intense kind of you know, drama between relationships that are really struggling through this time. We had was it Erin Connor, I think, is the playing the wife, Vicky, of um Elijah's brother. I'm trying to think what that character's name was. Mark, that's what it was,
Yeah.
played by Greg Poppleton. Yeah, their kind of marriage is in breakdown because he's taken on board his niece as their child because um, his and Elijah's sister have has recently died. So there's this whole dynamic coming through, and it's like, what exactly is going on here? There's all these stresses around this family unit, and you don't get it right away what's actually happening. So you get released bits of information at a time.
Yep.
So the way it comes together it keeps you watching to like find out what it is going on. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting the way it did that.
Yeah, I loved how I don't know the right word to use. I loved how daring this film was in the sense also that it touched on topics that we rarely touch on here in film, and that one of the scenes that really stood out for me was the scene where you had a Jewish man in a cemetery in Australia, and suddenly he's hearing this racist tirade against Jewish people from a guy who is in the cemetery as well. And I just thought that was really brave because I don't know, like I think you and I were talking a little bit later on. We were talking about like how at one point here in Australia we had films like Romper Stomper that would tackle those kinds of things, but now it almost feels like we're
Yeah.
in this time where it's like, yeah, these are important topics, but we don't really want to explore them in case we offend somebody. So I
Yeah,
was
we're
actually,
really discouraged now from talking about things. It's like, no, if you say something bad, you're wrong. So we can't even discuss why it's wrong. It's
yeah,
really strange now. Yeah.
like the film, there was a film that came out here in Australia last year called Shader, and it really explored domestic violence. And it kind of concerned me that there were so many people that were kind of out there who was like, oh, it's a brilliant film, but I don't know if I can tell my friends to go and see it because it's so full on about domestic violence. And it's like, they're the kind of films that we should be showing people. I mean, we're talking about racism and violence against women in Australia, but we'll keep films like Anno 2020 and Shader away from the general public because we might offend somebody. It's like, no, to let people watch those films and learn what the consequences of those things are for people on the other side. But
That's right.
yeah, so I don't know, that was the scene for me that really made me think this is a really good film. But we better wrap up. Would you what are you going to give Anno 2020 out of 5 and why?
Or I think a lot of the whys are definitely in the performance and also the work of Simon Carter, who was the director of photography. Like he is just so on point about knowing what to catch. Um, yeah, that was done so well. I think I'll give it 4 out of 5 actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 as well. I think this is a pretty brave film. Um Brilliant the way it all came together. Um Perhaps a little bit too long. Like I thought at times there could have been a way of making it a little bit shorter, but yeah, I just thought this is a very very brave film, brilliantly put together. When you consider the way it was put together, so yeah, 4 out of 5. So check our website for when screenings of Anno 2020 will be happening. There are going to be more screenings around Australia, and it's also going to go to a streaming platform eventually as well. But Harley and I both gave it 4 out of 5. So make sure you stay tuned to subcultureentertainment.com to see when it might be screening at a place near you.